This is Whisper from History, where forgotten voices rise again. In every war, swords, bullets, and bombs are the weapons of choice. But there was one war where the sky itself became the ultimate weapon. This is America's Secret Weather War, a story where science, secrecy, and fear collided. Stay with us as we uncover this hidden truth. In the long shadow of World War II, the United States military sought mastery over something far greater than armies, fleets, or air squadrons. It set its sights on the sky itself. In the dawn of the Cold War, amid fear of Soviet domination and nuclear Armageddon, America launched one of its strangest and most audacious projects to weaponize the weather. This pursuit was not born in a vacuum. For centuries, humanity had viewed the heavens with awe and desperation. Farmers prayed for rain. Generals feared storms that might drown their armies. The great Mongol fleets were shattered by typhoons. Napoleon's armies froze in the Russian winter, and D-Day itself balanced on a knife's edge of wind and cloud. Weather was both ally and enemy, shaping history without mercy. By the mid-20th century, the United States believed it could finally tame this force of nature. Science had leaped forward after the Manhattan Project. The line between possible and impossible blurred. If atoms could be split to destroy cities, why couldn't clouds be seeded to create storms? Why couldn't hurricanes be diverted, monsoons unleashed, droughts summoned at will? In this moment of ambition, secrecy, and paranoia, the U.S. Army, the Air Force, and even civilian agencies like the Weather Bureau poured money into experiments that would remain hidden for decades. The first great leap came with a project called Cirrus in 1947. A group of scientists, including the legendary Nobel laureate Irving Langmuir, took to the skies with the idea that clouds could be seeded with dry ice or silver iodide to unleash rain or snow on command. They flew bombers into thunderheads, releasing chemicals into the heart of storms, watching as ice crystals bloomed and rainfall cascaded where once there had been none. Reports claimed success. Langmuir himself declared that mankind now possessed the keys to control the heavens. To military strategists, it was intoxicating. If one could summon storms at will, then battlefields could be drowned, supply lines washed away, harvests ruined. Weather could become the ultimate weapon of war. The Army and Air Force pressed ahead, cloaking their operations in secrecy. Cirrus gave way to Project Stormfury, which aimed at the greatest of nature's engines, hurricanes. Beginning in the 1960s, scientists seeded storm clouds on the edges of hurricanes with silver iodide, hoping to disrupt their structure and weaken their deadly winds. B-52s flew daring missions into walls of black cloud and roaring thunder, releasing chemicals like ghostly fingerprints into the storms. Observers claimed to see results: winds dropping, eye walls collapsing, but the science remained uncertain. Still, the military dreamed of a future where hurricanes could be steered away from American shores, or perhaps even directed toward enemies. Yet in the fog of the Cold War, America's experiments did not stop at defense. The U.S. Army turned its eyes toward Southeast Asia, where a grinding war in Vietnam drained American lives and resources. In this humid, rain-soaked theater, commanders faced guerrillas who moved unseen through jungles and along the Ho Chi Minh Trail. The terrain gave them shelter. The weather favored their movements. In secret, the Pentagon wondered, could the skies themselves be turned against the enemy? The answer became Project Popeye. Beginning in 1967, the United States Air Force, with Army cooperation, carried out covert weather modification operations over Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam. Planes equipped with cloud-seeding equipment flew sorties over monsoon-laden skies, releasing silver iodide into rain-heavy clouds. The goal was not to destroy cities or summon hurricanes, but to stretch the monsoon season, to keep the rains falling weeks longer than nature intended. The consequences were devastating. Dirt paths along the Ho Chi Minh Trail turned into rivers of mud. Supply trucks bogged down. Foot soldiers found themselves slogging through endless downpours. Entire regions became quagmires, where the line between land and swamp blurred. The army had unleashed a war fought not with bullets, but with rain, for years. Project Popeye remained one of the best-kept secrets of the Vietnam War. The U.S. military denied its existence, even as rumors trickled out. "Make mud, not war," joked some insiders, masking the deadly seriousness of the operation. Between 1967 and 1972, thousands of cloud-seeding sorties were flown. It was the first time in history that a nation had deliberately changed the weather in combat, but the project raised troubling questions. Could weather modification cross the line into a weapon of mass destruction? Could entire nations be starved by drought, their crops withered under engineered skies? Could typhoons be steered toward enemy coasts, flooding cities and ports? The U.S. Army had walked into the realm of science fiction, but the implications were chillingly real. The secrecy eventually cracked. In 1971, journalist Jack Anderson revealed the existence of weather modification in Vietnam. A scandal erupted in Washington. Congressional hearings followed, where stunned lawmakers learned that their own military had conducted a silent war in the skies, without public knowledge, without debate. Senator Claiborne Pell declared it a Pandora's box. In the years that followed, global outrage grew. If the United States could manipulate the skies, what would stop the Soviet Union from doing the same? Would wars of the future be fought not with armies, but with droughts and floods? The fear was so great that in 1977, the world's superpowers signed the Environmental Modification Convention, banning the military use of weather modification. It was the first treaty in history to acknowledge that the environment itself could be weaponized. But the truth is more complicated. Even as treaties were signed and public promises made, the U.S. military did not entirely abandon its interest. Weather modification remained alluring, and experiments continued quietly. The Army funded research into how fog could be dissipated to allow planes to land, how clouds could be seeded to create cover for troops, how lightning might be manipulated on the battlefield. These were defensive measures, they said. But the line between defense and offense blurred, as it always had. Behind closed doors, in classified reports and Pentagon briefings, scientists speculated on a future where wars could be fought through the manipulation of nature itself. Imagine a battlefield where the skies above an enemy army crack open with endless rain, where their supply lines vanish into floods, where their air bases are shrouded in fog. Imagine the power of wielding drought as a weapon, turning fertile plains into dust bowls. These were not fantasies to the men who had already seeded storms and stretched monsoons. They were possibilities waiting for funding, for political will, for a war desperate enough to call them forth. As the decades passed, technology only deepened the temptation. Satellites gave armies the power to see storms forming across the globe. Computers began to model the atmosphere in ways unimaginable to Langmuir and his generation. High-altitude aircraft and rockets provided new means of delivering chemicals to the skies. Whispered projects hinted at even greater ambitions. Some believed that ionospheric heaters, like HAARP in Alaska, might one day influence weather patterns on a massive scale. Others speculated that directed energy weapons could nudge storms from one course to another. The Army's fascination with weather was not just about destruction. Weather also meant survival. In desert wars like Iraq, commanders longed for the ability to summon rain or shade. In Arctic training, they dreamed of breaking fog on command. On humanitarian missions, the prospect of ending droughts or steering hurricanes away from civilian populations was tantalizing. Yet every benevolent use was shadowed by darker questions. Could the same power, in different hands, be turned into a weapon that no treaty could restrain. Today, the U.S. Army no longer speaks openly about weather warfare. Officially, treaties forbid it, and the Pentagon insists it does not engage in it. But the legacy of Cirrus, Stormfury, and Popeye lingers like a storm on the horizon. Documents remain classified. Reports are buried in archives. Veterans of those programs carry memories that few will ever hear. And still, the dream of controlling the skies has never left the human imagination. For every generation of generals, the weather is both ally and enemy, shaping the fates of campaigns and nations. The temptation to master it remains as strong as ever. Science marches forward, and with it comes the possibility that one day, the storm itself may become a soldier, the cloud a weapon, the rain a battlefield. The U.S. Army's secret weather war was not just about Vietnam, or hurricanes, or experiments in the clouds. It was about the human hunger for control in a world defined by chaos. It was about fear in an age of Cold War rivalry. It was about the willingness to reshape nature itself in pursuit of victory. The story of America's weather war is not over. It lives in treaties signed under pressure, in archives sealed by secrecy, in the whispers of pilots who once seeded clouds over the jungles of Southeast Asia. It lives in the imagination of scientists who still look to the sky and wonder whether the greatest battlefield of all lies not on the ground, but in the shifting winds above our heads. And when the rains fall heavy, when hurricanes churn, when drought lingers longer than it should, the question arises again. How much of this is natural and how much is the legacy of a time when the Army dared to make the weather its weapon? The clouds still gather, the storms still rise. But when the rain refuses to stop and the thunder never fades, a chilling question remains. Is this the voice of nature, or the first glimpse of humanity's next war? If you found this story compelling, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and explore our Dark History playlist. This video is narrated by an AI voice, script and editing done by human.